The Supreme Court is back in session and taking up several key cases during its new term.
Among them, birthright, citizenship, LGBTQ rights, and campaign finance. Justices will also hear arguments tomorrow that could drastically change the 1965 Voting Rights Act. So here to break down what this ruling means is Justice Correspondent for The Nation magazine, Elie Mystal. So good morning to you. Thank you for being here. Good to see you.
Good morning. I'm up in White Plains, and my kids are always telling me about how climate change is actually what's affecting our ability to do leaf peeping, which I'm with your man. Never my thing, but my kids used to like it.
Yeah, I hear you. I mean, it's real. What's happening out there is real. Let's begin with the basics, right? Here we go. How many cases will the Supreme Court actually be voting on during this session? It's going to be expected to be a packed few weeks here. So when can those decisions come down?
Yeah, so the court usually hears between 50 and 70 cases a year. That's not including, though, its emergency Trump docket, where it has been giving a rubber stamp to the Trump administration on the shadow docket without argument or explanation in a kind of expedited and very quick fashion. So without knowing how many shadow docket cases there are, I can still expect, again, between 50 and 70, maybe 80 decisions over the course of the next year. Many of the cases, even the ones that are being argued right now, this week, will not come out when their final decision until June or maybe even very, very early July. So there's a lot of time where the justices will be kind of deliberating and considering and writing their opinions. But that stuff on the shadow docket, that can kind of come at any point, at any time, without any argument.
So let's pick apart some of these. A lot of folks have been talking about the 1965 Voting Rights Act. So oral arguments, they begin tomorrow, which could weaken that Voting Rights Act. So can you explain exactly what's at stake?
Yeah, so this is, I think, the most important case of the term. The Voting Rights Act secures the right to vote for people regardless of race, color, or creed. The Supreme Court has weakened the Voting Rights Act many times over the 20 years that John Roberts has been on the court. And this is another kind of direct shot across the bow over that act. What they're trying to say is that when you represent everybody equally, that is unfair to white folks. I mean, that's really the argument here, that overrepresentation of white folks in red states that they control is not only constitutionally okay, it's actually constitutionally required. So we have a case in Louisiana. Louisiana is, about a third non-white. Whites control about 80% of the congressional seats in Louisiana. People sued saying, well, Louisiana, it's about a third not white. It should be about a third not white congressman. And the Republicans said, no, we're not overrepresenting white folks. I'm sorry, if we're not overrepresenting white folks, then that's unconstitutional. And there's an excellent chance that the court, 6-3 down normal party lines, will say that the overrepresentation of white folks is constitutionally required against the strictures of the Voting Rights Act. It's a case that can change literally how Congress works this coming midterm election in 2026. Depending on how they rule, you could see 19, I think I saw somewhere, seats flip from Democrat to Republican if they're allowed to, again, overrepresent white folks in voting.
Yeah. Let's talk about another big case the court is reviewing, and it's one that will have ramifications for the LGBTQ plus community, right? Concerning conversion therapy as well as trans rights. So what is at stake here? What are the possible outcomes?
Oh, yeah, they're coming for the LGBTQ community, like, they're in their sights. We already heard a case on conversion therapy where a person who was practicing this therapy said she had a First Amendment right to practice this medically unsound and unregulated therapy, even though she was licensed in this case by the state of Colorado. Now, you and I know that there are a whole bunch of things that you can say as a free speech right, whatever, when you're not a doctor. But when you are a licensed medical professional, you're supposed to follow, the standard medical consensus on treatments and therapies. And this woman was saying, no, I don't have to do that because God says I don't have to do that. And apparently the Supreme Court was like, yeah, that's good. I'll note that the Supreme Court has good enough health care. They don't have to see this doctor. right? They don't have to see this therapist. But I guess for the rest of us, they don't care. And so there's a good chance that case is going to go against the medical consensus. It's almost like you heard RFK Jr. arguing at the Supreme Court as opposed to people who have law degrees. And then you have another case coming up later this fall, I believe, really about transgender athletes. A few states have rules that treat trans women completely differently than trans men, that treat girls completely differently than boys when it comes to sports, including the ability to check the gender of a female athlete at the request of a rival, which is not something that happens to the boys. So that seems like a clear violation of equal protection to me, but I am not on the Supreme Court, and the 6 Republicans on the Supreme Court seem to not have a problem with that. So that's also coming up later this term, and I don't expect it to go well.
All right. Well, before we let you go, what about birthright citizenship? That's also before the Supreme Court again. And President Trump signed an executive order abolishing it. That was back in January. So what do you think is the likelihood that the Supreme Court is going to side with the president?
I think that's the one thing he might lose. And please burn this tape because I don't want to sound naive. But I think that might be the one thing he loses in front of the Supreme Court, because while Trump can beat his chest, he actually can't decide what the states do at their Bureau of Vital Statistics, right? Like, I have 2 kids. When we had our kids, it's not the federal government that gave us the birth certificate. It was the state of New York, right? My birth certificate's from Mount Sinai. My kid's birth certificate is from Lenox Hill, right? And so trying to have the state of New York change their Bureau of Vital Statistics to basically to serve the racism of Donald Trump, that's not something that he'll necessarily win. He'll have at least 3, maybe 4 votes for it. I don't know that I can count to 5 quite yet, but obviously I will listen to those arguments, and who knows what will happen, and there are things the justices could say that would change my mind on that, but as it stands now, I'm not sure he's going to win that.
All right, Elie, good to see you as always. Come on back, okay? And we won't burn the tape.
Thank you so much for having me.
We're not burning the tape, all right? Good to see you. 8:41, everybody. By the way, you can check out Elie's feature article in The Nation for more on the cases before the Supreme Court. That is out now.